This diagram plots a severe historical tension in ancient Indian philosophy. On the y-axis, we have the ascetical tradition of sannyasa, the renunciation of all physical action. On the x-axis, the orthodox varnashrama framework, which demands strict adherence to social obligations. We can plot Arjuna right here, trapped at the exact intersection of these two conflicting philosophical vectors, buckling under immense pressure. This tension defines the opening of the Bhagavad Gita's third chapter. Arjuna is experiencing profound cognitive dissonance stemming directly from Krishna's teachings in the previous chapter. Krishna previously praised discriminative self-knowledge and the refinement of the intellect as the ultimate path. Arjuna is trapped by a logical paradox. If intellectual detachment is the highest good, why is he commanded to engage in a horrific battlefield conflict? Arjuna misconstrues intellectual elevation as an endorsement of physical quietism. This error leads to a complete paralysis of duty, a paralysis that requires a rigorous philosophical resolution. Krishna immediately dismantles Arjuna's premise. He asserts that physical non-action does not constitute true spiritual renunciation. He introduces the concept of the mithyachara, the pretender. This is an individual who suppresses their physical organs of action, maintaining the external appearance of withdrawal, while their mind continues to dwell intensely on sensory gratification. Krishna contrasts this false inertia with karma yoga. This is an integrated spiritual discipline where the practitioner executes their worldly duties without forming internal attachments to the outcomes. The central thesis of Chapter 3 is that liberation is achieved through a highly specific cognitive protocol for executing action, and not through the cessation of work. Treating action and wisdom as mutually exclusive paths is a fundamental epistemological error. True wisdom must be weaponized through action. To understand how Krishna proves this, we can construct his argument using this three-tiered architectural blueprint, starting here at the base tier of metaphysics and cosmology. Krishna establishes a fundamental metaphysical axiom: absolute physical inaction is biologically and physically impossible for any embodied entity in this world. Material nature operates through three fundamental modes, or gunas. These are sattva for equilibrium, rajas for activity, and tamas for inertia. These three modes helplessly and deterministically impel all living beings to act, moment to moment. Even the maintenance of the physical body requires continuous metabolic activity. Because action is inescapable, the practitioner's objective shifts. The true goal is no longer attempting to stop action, but mastering how to interact with these deterministic material forces. Forced asceticism fights against the laws of physics itself. Spiritual liberation requires working with the mechanics of nature, not against them. Krishna then scales this physical reality up to a cosmological level. He introduces the principle of yajna, or reciprocal sacrifice. He frames the universe as an interconnected, closed-loop ecosystem of mutual obligation. He presents a formal causal progression for this cosmic wheel. We see that the supreme reality, or Brahman, generates prescribed duty, which in turn necessitates sacrificial action. That sacrifice creates atmospheric rain. Rain generates food, and food sustains all living beings, closing the loop. The cycle dictates that survival relies on constant, reciprocal outputs from every entity within the system. The ontological consequence is severe. Consuming the natural abundance of the system without offering back in service is classified by Krishna as theft. Action only generates karmic bondage when it is performed outside the spirit of yajna. Reciprocal action is the actual engine of universal prosperity. Moving up to the middle tier of our blueprint, we address the status of the fully enlightened soul, or Atmarati. A critical question arises. If a person is completely satisfied within the self, possessing no selfish ends to gain, why must they continue physical work? Krishna answers with the concept of loka sangraha, the preservation, protection, and structural integration of the world order. He formulates a strict sociological law of leadership. The standard set by leaders, pramanam, results directly in emulation by society, anuvartate. Whatever behavioral standard a prominent person sets, the rest of society naturally and instinctively emulates. Krishna cites the historical sage King Janaka, who maintained his worldly governance despite achieving perfection. Krishna even points to his own adherence to duty, noting that the divine engages continuously in work, despite having absolutely nothing left to attain. If the wise withdraw into physical inertia, the ignorant will emulate that inertia. The guaranteed result is the moral degradation and structural collapse of society. We reach the topmost tier of the blueprint to analyze the internal mechanics of consciousness and the root mechanism of human delusion. This is the structure of consciousness. We have the outer ring of the senses, the middle ring of the mind, the inner ring of the intellect, and at the absolute center, the true self, or Atman. Krishna deconstructs the illusion of human agency. Physical and mental processes are merely modes of nature, the gunas, mechanically interacting with other modes of nature. The ego falsely claims that I am the doer of these mechanical interactions. The true Atman remains an unattached witness. Arjuna uses this framework to ask a critical question regarding moral pathology. What force drives a person to commit unrighteous actions against their conscious will? Krishna identifies the primary enemy. It is kama, or desire, born of the active mode of passion. When obstructed, this desire transforms into anger, corrupting the senses, the mind, and the intellect. To combat this, Krishna introduces the doctrine of swadharma, one's intrinsic duty based on psychophysical aptitude. Since psychological dispositions are intrinsic, attempting to imitate another's path out of ambition creates severe spiritual disruption. Cognitive mastery requires aligning external obligations with internal capacity. You cannot defeat desire by suppressing it. You manage it through the execution of authentic duty. We can now merge these cosmological, sociological, and psychological proofs into a single operational workflow pipeline. This is the protocol of Nishkama Karma. Look at the inputs. Action must be executed, and it must be perfectly aligned with one's intrinsic nature. This action passes through a cognitive filter. The practitioner dedicates all actions to the divine, casts off egotistical expectations of reward, and eliminates claims of ownership. Finally, the output. Actions passing through this filter no longer generate karmic bondage. Instead, the process yields psychological purification and liberation. This exact protocol allows an individual to operate within a deterministic material world without succumbing to mental fever. Nishkama Karma successfully converts potential bondage-creating actions into the exact mechanisms that free the mind. We bring this high-level ontological system back to the primary text and back to the reality of the battlefield. Arjuna's dilemma is resolved. Krishna commands him to fight, not because violence is inherently good, but because abandoning his duty violates cosmological necessity, sociological stability, and his own psychological nature. The battlefield is not an obstacle to spiritual wisdom. When approached with absolute detachment, it is the ultimate laboratory for self-mastery. The Bhagavad Gita does not advocate for quiet withdrawal. It presents a radical, highly engaged philosophy, total immersion in the world's chaos, executed with absolute internal silence.